Hello and welcome to your next lesson of reading this week. So today we're going to be carrying on with part 3 of our book, so make sure you have that with you, as well as a pen and a pencil in your workbook. So today we're going to be reading part of chapter 2, and then you're going to be interviewing a character at the end of the lesson. So before we start reading, let's just check some of the vocabulary. So overthrown is a word we're going to see in this chapter. Overthrown means taken over. So you could have said that King Arthur, so King Rience maybe was overthrown by King Arthur. So that means he was defeated. No, let's start again. Hello and welcome to your next reading lesson. We're continuing with chapter 2 of part 3 of our book, so make sure you've got your book with you. You will also need a pencil and a writing book, because we're going to be reading part of chapter 2 today, and then you're going to be interviewing a character at the end of the lesson. So before we start, let's just check some of the vocabulary in our story. So we've got overthrown in this chapter, and overthrown means defeated. Whom, that's an old-fashioned way of saying who. That's easy to remember. Scolded. Now I've got a picture there to help us understand what scolded means, and it simply means told off. Mere, that's a very old-fashioned word again. Mere means little. Obey. Now if you obey something, then you do what you're told. Okay, so here are some of our characters. So remember King Leodegrance, he is Lady Guinevere's father, and at the moment King Rience and Duke Mordaunt are trying to so Duke Mordaunt wants to marry Lady Guinevere, and King Rience wants more land, doesn't he? So they've come to King Leodegrance's castle to possibly have a war with him. So we've got Duke Mordaunt, and then we've also got, obviously, King Arthur, and then we've got our knights. Do you remember that came with King Arthur? So Sir Geraint, Sir Gawain, Sir Pelleas, and Sir Owain. So these knights came with King Arthur in chapter 1. So do you remember, we think that King Arthur loves Lady Guinevere because he's come to help her. And he can disguise himself as a gardener boy from wearing a magical cap. So when he put the cap on, he was a gardener boy. Lady Guinevere found out that it was actually King Arthur. And Duke Mordaunt was showing off. Do you remember it described him as puffed up? He was showing off to everybody, saying that he wanted to fight, to show off to Lady Guinevere. And no one wanted to fight him, obviously, except for Arthur, who, from a merchant, got some very fancy white armour and silks, and nobody knew that it was King Arthur, and he, just at the end of chapter 1, threw Duke Mordaunt off his horse. So that's where we've got to in our story. So go to page 52 and we can start reading. So while waiting for Mordaunt to recover, Arthur decided to take a ride into the forest. There he found a knight singing to 3 ladies in a tower. When he got closer, Arthur realised that the performer was none other than Sir Geraint, one of his knights that he brought with him from Cameliard. Geraint, however, didn't recognise Arthur. So do you remember, he's in all of that fancy armour, and it didn't have this crest on it, so nobody knew that it was Arthur. So Geraint, however, didn't recognise Arthur, and therefore challenged him to a friendly contest of skill. That kind of means a friendly fight. In fact, he bet Arthur that the ladies watching were more beautiful than Arthur's lady. Telling Geraint that his own lady was the most beautiful woman in the world, Arthur accepted the challenge. So I think Arthur's probably talking about Lady Guinevere. The men agreed that whoever won would serve the other ladies, or in Geraint's case, ladies, for 7 days, so become their servants. Geraint was a skilled knight, but was, of course, no match for King Arthur, and was quickly overthrown, so quickly defeated. Arthur helped the surprised knight to his feet. He told him to make his way to Guinevere. He should tell her that he had been overthrown by the knight to whom she had given her pearl necklace. So therefore, when Geraint tells Lady Guinevere this, she'll know that it was actually King Arthur. Geraint, who was a man of his word, obeyed, so did what he was told. As Arthur continued to make his way through the forest, he also encountered the 3 other knights he had brought with him. Gawain and Owain were together, and Sir Pelleas that was last. Just like Geraint, all 3 knights challenged the man, whom they did not recognise as their king, to contests of knightly skill. And just like Geraint, all 3 knights performed nobly and were overthrown and sent on their way to Guinevere. Guinevere's going to have lots of servants. All were sent with that same message, that they had been defeated in her honour by the knight to whom she had given the pearl necklace. When the 4 knights arrived at Cameliard and realised that each had suffered the same fate at the hands of the White Knights, they were so embarrassed that they could hardly look at one another. However, when they saw the 4... Hang on, where did I get to? I've lost my page. They were so embarrassed they could hardly look at one another. However, when Guinevere saw the 4 knights whom her mystery knight had defeated, she beamed with pride and pleasure that she had given a token of affection to such a great man. Oh, I'd forgotten. She doesn't know it's King Arthur, does she? She knows that the gardener boy is King Arthur, but because he was dressed in armour, she doesn't know who the White Knight is. With his magic cap back on and his borrowed white horse and armour safely hidden in the forest, Arthur returned to Cameliard. There he found himself in trouble. Oh dear. His boss, the head gardener, was angry at Arthur for disappearing when there was work to be done. Grabbing Arthur by the collar, he scolded him, so told him off, and threatened to hit him with the stick he was holding. Arthur's royal spirit surged up within him, and he roughly pushed the head gardener away and took the stick from him. The head gardener went straight to the Lady Guinevere to complain. Guinevere seemed less angry than amused. She found it funny. Secretly, she was thinking it very strange that the White Champion was around. When the White Champion was around, the gardener boy was not. And when the gardener boy returned, the White Champion was missing once more. She wasn't certain, but she thought it was a great coincidence that the gardener boy and the White Knight had arrived in the kingdom at the same time. She wondered if they might not be the same man. Let him be, she said, smiling. She would stop smiling soon. The next day, the Duke Mordaunt of Northumber returned. Okay, so we're going to stop there for today and read the rest of the chapter tomorrow. So now what I'd like you to do is I would like you to imagine you could interview a character from the story. So what would you like to ask them? And what would their replies be? What I'd like you to do is I would like you to pick a character from this chapter and imagine you're going to interview them. So if you could meet them, what would you want to ask them? And what do you think they might say back based on what we've read? And then I'd like you to write your interview with your character. So you could set it out so you've got 2 different colours, one for questions for your character and one for your character's answers. So here's an example. So I've got a picture of King Arthur in his white, dressed as the White Champion. So here's an example. So I'd put an interview with King Arthur at the top, and then my first question would be, why did you disguise yourself as the gardener boy? And then his answer I've put in different colour because I wanted to watch over and protect Lady Guinevere without anyone knowing. So I've just given an example of one question. I want you to think of a few more questions that you could ask your character. So you could choose King Arthur, you could choose Duke Mordaunt, Lady Guinevere, one of the knights maybe, who were embarrassed that they'd been defeated. You can pick any character you like from this chapter. So make sure you think of some questions and think of some answers they could say and write down your interview. Well done today, and I'll see you in the next lesson.